I got very fascinated with technology. I wrote a book called The Mobile Wave. And in The Mobile Wave back...
That was 2012, that book?
I published it 2012. I wrote it 2010, 2011. And the theme of the book is what happens when software dematerializes, when the software runs on a phone, when the computer goes from under your desk to in your hand, when it's no longer solid state or liquid state, but it's vapor state, and you go to sleep with the phone next to you. What kind of software would happen in the mobile world? And of course, we know all about it, right? The Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Ubers, all of these things became possible during the mobile era. They were inconceivable when the software ran on a computer. So the theme of the book is, software is going to leap from under our desk to our clothing. We'll wear it, we'll hold it, and it's going to become ubiquitous 24/7, 365, and it's going to change. We're going to dematerialize 27,000 devices. 20,000 device companies died so Apple could live. We're going to crush 20,000 retailers because everybody's going to want the Amazon. You're going to see 20,000 newspapers crushed because Google and Facebook eats them. And, the message of the book is, you probably ought to just buy the Amazon stock or buy the Apple stock. And as an investor, I took, a decent amount of money, call it $25 million that I'd made over the previous 20 years as a CEO and as a founder of a company. I invested in these stocks and I 20x'd it. If how do you make money in the tech world? You invest in something everybody needs, nobody can stop, and very few people understand. Like most people will, in the year 2010, if you had said, hey, I really think that Amazon's going to work, people would have said, you're crazy, Amazon's losing money, no one's going to do this, and they would have thought you're nuts. And if you had said, I remember with Apple, you say, well, Apple, I think this iPhone's a cool thing. They would say, well, no, eventually it'll go to the price of $25 a phone like Nokia. It's going to be commoditized. They can't hold, their margins are too high. They're going to actually have their margins collapse like Dell or like Nokia. And of course, the conventional wisdom was Apple's not a good investment, Amazon's not a good investment, Facebook, what is this goofy thing? And of course, for the next decade, here's what happened. I work an hour a month as an investor and I get rich. Make $500 million. Not working, embarrassing. All you got to do is just buy the Magnificent Seven in 2010. And the conventional wisdom of Wall Street is, if the stock doubles, you should diversify. You should sell half of it. If Apple doubles in price, go buy some IBM and some HP and some other computer company. If it doubles again, you sell some more of the portfolio and you buy the thing. And their thought was, you got to stay diversified. But the problem is Apple won, everybody else lost. At one point, Apple made all the money in the mobile phone business. Everybody else collectively lost money to compete with them. Amazon won.
Samsung as well? All of them?
Yeah, if you look at the winners in this era, right? I mean, Apple was a winner, Amazon was a winner, Google, Facebook were a winner. Samsung is the winner in the Far East. Walmart kept up. Every other retailer, it's like there's two or three that kind of keep up. Maybe a Walmart, maybe a Target, but there's 20,000 that went out of business.
I know as a clinical psychologist that any given teenager is going to fall prey to peer pressure from time to time. If you listen hard enough, people are likely to tell you everything.
Our son, who's in 7th grade, he's starting to fall in with a bad friend group.
Teenagers are desperate to fit in and obviously desperate to have friends and not to be the isolated target of exclusion and bullying.
How do we as parents get involved and engaged?
The reason people don't have these sorts of conversations is because they don't want the emotion. And the longer you let it go on, the more mess you're going to have to clean up.
Our daughter was bullied at her school.
How do we protect our kids when this is happening?
Don't let your kids drift away when they're teenagers. They don't want to, but they will if you don't pay attention.
Do you think that's partly a consequence of the is there a radically centralizing tendency of the mobile world?
There is.
And so it's increasingly a winner take all. Because when everyone's connected, the Pareto distribution goes out of control. That's what it looks like to me. There's like one person occupies each niche or one company because everything's connected. There's no micro markets anymore.
These all became dominant digital monopolies. And they became dominant because Apple could ship a new feature to the iPhone over the weekend to 1 billion people for the cost of the electricity. And before Apple, you would have to, Kodak or Polaroid or fill in the blank, would have to create a new device. It would take a year, and then they would have to sell it, and it would take another year, and there's a variable cost to it. So when the functionality becomes software, there's a 99% gross margin, and you can give it to 100 million, 1 billion, right? Apple could do Apple Music and give it to 1 billion people.
IP ownership matters.
Right, and so they dominated the rails, and they had these. I used to say Apple's going to be the most valuable company in the world because it's the most valuable company in the world because it's the first time one company could deliver a feature to 1 billion people overnight. We never had that 30 years ago or 40 years ago. So there are all these natural monopolies that built, and at some point, Microsoft dominated, business software and Facebook.
How did you see that early? I mean, the companies you listed off, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good hit list. And like you said, you worked yourself half to death, but all the money that you made, or the majority of the money you made, was actually a consequence of an hour a month in investment strategy. But like what? And this is germane to the Bitcoin question, because one of the things you're doing is setting up the circumstance. You saw the direction the digital world was going. You bet money on it, which is actually an indication of commitment to it. And the bets that you made paid off. And they paid off in some ways more than